I used to think forgetting things was funny. You know, calling my grandson by the dog's name. Walking into the kitchen and forgetting why I went there. Telling the same story twice at dinner, then laughing it off. People around me would chuckle. I would, too. It's just age, we'd say, senior moment. But somewhere deep inside, I wasn't laughing. Because something changed. And I mean that. I felt it. It wasn't just forgetting names anymore. That IT was forgetting how I felt about things. Forgetting the point of what I was saying mid-sentence. Forgetting how to enjoy the things I used to love. That's not age. That's not a joke. That's a warning. It took me too long to realize my brain wasn't aging. It was slipping, slowly, subtly, and silently. And if you're over 60 and you've noticed some little things lately that don't feel quite right, I need to tell you something before it's too late. Here's how it started for me. 5 subtle shifts I wish I noticed sooner. The first one hit like a whisper, not a scream, not a diagnosis, just a small, quiet moment that I now realize was the beginning of everything. 1. You start avoiding new information without noticing. My daughter gave me a book for my birthday. Normally I'd dive into it, but I didn't even open it. I told her I'd get to it later. I never did. Then I noticed the same thing with TV shows, articles, new recipes, even conversations that required me to think. I wasn't tired, I just didn't want to engage. Later I read that the brain, when it starts to feel overwhelmed, begins to withdraw from challenge. Not because it's broken, because it's protecting itself. But that kind of protection, that's the beginning of decline. When you stop taking a new input, your brain starts to atrophy, just like a muscle that's no longer used. I wasn't lazy, I was starting to give up, and I didn't even know it. 2. You repeat yourself, and only realize after. I was at lunch with a friend, telling him a story about a neighbor. He let me finish, then said, "You told me this last week." That one stuck with me, not because I repeated myself, but because I had no memory of doing it. I'd done the same thing to my daughter and my wife, more than once. It wasn't forgetfulness, it was a kind of mental loop. The experts call it a failure in working memory, the place where thoughts go before we sort and store them. I began writing down everything I said to people, just to track if I was looping. And I was. Not always, but enough that it scared me. 3. You wake up tired, even after sleeping well. This one took me months to notice. I was going to bed early, getting 7, 8 hours, but I was waking up groggy. Not tired, just foggy. I brushed it off, but then I learned about sleep fragmentation and how it blocks your brain from repairing itself at night. I took a home sleep test. Turned out I had mild sleep apnea. No loud snoring, no choking or gasping. Just enough interruptions to ruin my deep sleep cycles. Which meant my brain wasn't clearing out toxins, it wasn't repairing. It was like rebooting a computer, but never letting it finish the restart. Once I addressed that, the fog began to clear. Sleep isn't rest. Sleep is brain maintenance. 4. You stop jumping into conversations. I didn't even notice this one at first. At family dinners, I'd sit back, let others talk, smile, nod. But I wasn't joining in. Not because I had nothing to say, because I couldn't keep up. By the time I formed a thought, the topic had moved on. I told myself it was just noise, but truthfully, I felt slower. And once you stop joining conversations, your brain stops practicing language. And that's how people begin to fade socially and mentally. That scared me more than anything. So I forced myself to speak more. To stumble through thoughts. To stay present, even when I felt behind. It was hard, but it helped. 5. You stop making plans because you doubt yourself. This was the last one. The one that nearly broke me. I stopped initiating things, stopped offering ideas, stopped making appointments, trips, even simple errands. I didn't say no. I just said maybe, and then did nothing. It was fear. Fear of forgetting. Fear of messing up. Fear of not being able to handle it. And I'd never felt that way before. That's when I knew something was really wrong. It wasn't age. It wasn't slowing down. It was my brain, pulling away from the world, from movement, from growth. I don't want that for you. I don't want you to get to the point where you stop trusting your own thoughts. Because there is something you can do, but not later, now. And I'll tell you what I learned in the second half of this story. But just know this, if any of these signs felt familiar, you're not alone, and you're not too late. There was a morning I'll never forget. I had gone to the pharmacy to pick up a refill, simple errand, something I'd done 100 times. I walked out of the store, and I had no idea where I'd parked. Now, listen, That happens to everyone, right? But I didn't just forget the spot. I forgot the car. For maybe 20, 30 seconds, I stood there wondering, wait, what car do I drive? It came back, eventually, but it didn't come back the same way. It didn't come with clarity. It came with fear. That was the moment everything became real. When I finally remembered the make and color of my car, I walked around the lot pretending I was just being forgetful. But something inside me had shifted. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was grief. Grief for my mind. Grief for the part of me I never thought I could lose. I sat in that car for 10 minutes before starting it. Just sat there, trying not to cry. The engine hummed beneath me, but all I could think was, what if this is just the beginning? A few days later, I booked an appointment with my doctor. Not my usual checkup. This time, I told him everything. The forgotten words. The repeated stories. The fog in the morning. The way I was pulling away from people. I expected a kind smile. Maybe a joke, something about getting older. But he didn't laugh. He nodded. He listened. Then he said, you're not showing signs of dementia, but your cognitive resilience is declining. I asked him what that meant. He said, it means your brain isn't broken, but it's not bouncing back like it used to. Then he leaned forward and said something I'll never forget. If we don't act now, it will get worse. And that scared me more than anything. He sent me home with a referral for a sleep study. He said it would help rule things out. I almost didn't go, but I'm glad I did. Turned out I had mild obstructive sleep apnea. Not the kind that makes you gasp for air, just enough to interrupt my deep sleep dozens of times a night. I started using a CPAP machine. Not comfortable, not fun, but in just a few nights, my dreams came back. That alone was worth it. But then came the clarity and the energy. Turns out, my brain wasn't declining because of AGE. It was suffocating, slowly, silently, nightly. Now I sleep better than I have in years, and I wake up clear. That was my first victory. Next came movement. My doctor said, a moving body fuels a working brain. So I moved, every day. Nothing extreme, just walking, slow, steady walks through the neighborhood, sometimes down to the lake, sometimes just to the corner and back. But those walks did something. They shook something loose, old memories, new thoughts, the kind of clarity you can't get sitting still. I started to feel lighter, not in weight, in being. My thoughts started flowing again, not fast, but steady. And for the first time in months, I felt like I was living forward, not just repeating the past. After that, I looked at what I was putting into my body. I won't lie, I loved my snacks, fried food, sugary coffee, microwave dinners, quick and easy. But they weren't feeding my mind, they were draining it. I switched to oily fish, sardines, salmon, nuts and seeds, fresh greens, berries, green tea. I added supplements, too. Omega-3s, magnesium L-threonate, vitamin D, lion's mane mushroom. No miracles, but in a few weeks, the fog started lifting again. Food isn't fuel. It's information, and my brain had been running on garbage. But all of that, sleep, movement, diet, was easy compared to this. Talking. You see, when you lose faith in your mind, the last thing you want to do is speak. Because speaking means exposure. It means showing people how slow you've become. But that's the trap. Silence makes it worse. So I forced myself to speak. At first, it was small. Talking to the cashier. Chatting with neighbors. Calling my brother just to ask how he was. Then I joined a reading group at the library. I read aloud. Even when I stumbled, I shared thoughts. Even when they weren't fully formed. And with every awkward pause, every missed word, I grew stronger. Language came back like a long-lost friend. Careful at first, but then bold. And in those conversations, I found myself again. One late afternoon, I sat with my grandson on the porch. He asked me something simple. What was Grandma like when you first met her? I almost gave a quick answer, but something in me held back. And I told him. The full story. The old stories. The memories I thought I'd lost. The dance we went to. The perfume she wore. The song that played when we first kissed. I saw his eyes light up, and I realized. I still remember. Not because my brain was strong, but because I fought for it. If you're reading this and wondering, is this happening to me? Then let me say this as clearly and gently as I can. If you feel like your brain is slipping, it probably is, but it doesn't have to. People will tell you it's normal. Doctors will shrug. Friends will laugh. But I'm telling you, there is still time. time to sleep deeper, eat better, move more, speak louder, learn something new, challenge yourself. Because your mind is not a candle that burns out. It's a fire that dims when it's not fed. In mine, it was almost gone, but I fed it, and it came back. So please, if you're over 60 and you feel what I felt, don't wait. Talk to someone. Move your body. Feed your brain. Trust that it can still grow. Because the greatest lie about aging is this: it's all downhill from here. That's not true. It only becomes true if you believe it. And if no one's told you yet, you still have time. You still have voice. You still have mind. Use it before you lose it.